Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. We're going way, way back, not to
We
ancient
gather
Egypt
by
or
this fire
Babylon,
to
or
remember
even
our
the Ice
ways.
Age.
Our
That would still
traditions
be
are the
too
fire
recent.
that keeps us
No,
strong.
tonight we're cracking
The
open the
veils,
forgotten
the
chapter that came
secrets,
before all of
ventrance of
that,
what is
back
and
when
what
humans were just
will
getting the
be.
hang of not dying every other week. Before cities, before writing, before the word medicine was even a thing, there was smoke. And here's what nobody tells you. That smoke, the one your father inhaled every morning with his coffee, the one your grandfather smoked through 2 wars, the one doctors recommended for your nerves in 1952, it started as a prayer, and somewhere along the way, we forgot how to pray. You're going to love this one. And you probably won't survive it, at least not if you were actually there 12,000 years ago in a cave with people who thought fire was the closest thing to God they'd ever see. Before you get comfortable, do me a favor. Like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm not trying to game the algorithm. I'm trying to tell you something true. Drop your city and time in the comments. I want to know which part of the world is tuning in and when. Phoenix at midnight, Boston at 3 a.m. Comment below. I read every one. Now dim the lights. Turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Do you ever wonder why humans started smoking in the first place? Do you know that smoking isn't modern? It's ancient, older than agriculture, older than the wheel. What if I told you the first smokers weren't rebels or addicts, but priests? What if every cigarette your father smoked was echoing a ritual 12,000 years old? What if smoke wasn't originally about pleasure, but about speaking to something larger than yourself? And here's the real question. What if we've been using it wrong for the last 500 years? Congratulations, you've just woken up. But not in 2025, in 10,000 BC. In a cave in Central Asia where the air smells like pine resin and fear. And you're about to witness the moment that changed everything. Let's begin. You're not important. Let's be clear about that. You're not the chief, not the elder, not the shaman, because that word doesn't exist yet. You're just another mouth to feed, another pair of hands to gather roots, another body that might not wake up tomorrow. Your tribe is 12 people. That's your whole world. The fire is dying. Someone needs to add fuel. Your turn. You reach for what you think is dried wood. It's dark. Your eyes aren't what they used to be, not that you're old. You're maybe 25, but that's ancient out here. You grab a bundle of something that feels right and toss it on the coals. The smoke that rises makes you cough immediately. Not normal smoke. This is thick, oily, blue-gray instead of white, and the smell bitter flowers and something metallic like blood. Everyone's coughing now. Someone's shouting at you in whatever language you speak, which isn't really a language, more like grunts with intention. But then something happens. The coughing stops. Someone starts laughing. Not at anything, just laughing. Then someone else. And suddenly you realize the fire isn't just a fire anymore. It's breathing. The flames pulse in rhythm with your heartbeat. The shadows on the cave wall aren't flickering randomly, they're dancing, deliberately, like they know something. You look at your hands. They're your hands. You know they're your hands. But they feel like they belong to someone else. Someone bigger. Someone who understands things you don't. The stars outside the cave entrance are moving in a slow spiral. Not falling, rotating, like the sky is a wheel and someone just started turning it. Here's what you don't know. You've just smoked cannabis. Or maybe datura. Or some plant that doesn't exist anymore because we cultivated it out of existence. Here's what you do know. The world just cracked open, and you saw something on the other side. Morning comes hard. Your head feels like it's been stuffed with wool. Your mouth tastes like you licked a burnt log. Someone is groaning in the corner. But here's the thing, nobody's talking about what happened last night. Not because it wasn't real, because it was too real. The elder, a woman maybe 40 years old, which makes her impossibly ancient, is staring at the remains of the fire. She picked up a piece of the plant you accidentally burned, smells it, doesn't say anything, just wraps it carefully in a piece of leather and puts it in her pouch. 3 nights later, she burns it again, intentionally this time. And now it's not an accident anymore. It's an experiment. 6 months later, it's a ritual. Here's your historical anchor. Archaeologists have found charred plant residues in ancient hearths dating back more than 12,000 years in Central Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. Some of those plants had no nutritional value. They weren't food. They weren't fuel. They were doors. Now we jump forward, 5,000 years forward. You're in Siberia. It's so cold your breath freezes before it leaves your mouth. The wind across the steppes sounds like the earth screaming. But inside this tent, a dome of animal skins stretched over mammoth ribs. It's warm, hot actually, uncomfortably hot. There are 8 of you crammed in here. A fire pit in the center with hot stones pulled from the coals. And a woman they call her the Voice crouching over a bronze bowl. She's not burning wood. She's burning hemp, lots of it, piled on the hot stones until the tent fills with smoke so thick you can't see the person across from you. You're not supposed to talk. That's the rule. But someone always breaks it. A man to your left whispers, "I saw her, my daughter. She told me where the herd went. His daughter died last winter. You were there when they buried her under stones to keep the wolves away." The Voice doesn't acknowledge him. She's rocking back and forth, humming something that isn't quite music. The smoke wraps around her like a living thing. And then she stops, looks directly at you, says your name, your actual name, in a voice that doesn't sound like hers. You try to ask how she knows. You've never met her before, but your throat won't work. Your whole body is locked, paralyzed, but not scared, just held. She speaks for 10 minutes. You don't remember most of it. Something about the buffalo, something about the river changing course, something about your brother who you thought died but maybe didn't. When the tent flap opens and cold air rushes in, you stumble outside and vomit in the snow. But 3 days later, you find your brother, alive, exactly where the Voice said he'd be. Here's the thing: archaeologists have excavated Scythian burial mounds with cannabis residues, bronze cauldrons, and wooden tripods designed to support tent fumigation. This wasn't myth. This was technology. But here's the fringe question that keeps scholars up at night. Were they just high, or were they accessing something we can't measure with tools? Let me tell you something nobody puts in the textbooks. Every single major civilization on Earth, separated by thousands of miles, thousands of years, independently discovered smoke ritual. The Siberian shamans, the African healers, the Amazonian priests, the Egyptian temple workers, the Chinese alchemists, the Indian yogis, the Mayan kings. They didn't trade notes. They didn't have a conference. They just knew. Which raises the uncomfortable question: what if smoke isn't something humans invented? What if it's something humans remembered? What if that first accidental inhalation in the cave wasn't discovery, it was recognition? Like we'd been waiting for fire to show us what we already knew. That's the first twist. Smoke didn't change humans. It revealed us. And now we're about to see what happened when that revelation left the cave and entered the temple. Welcome back. If you're still here, you're the kind of person who remembers when doctors smoked in hospitals, when cigarette companies sponsored Little League, when your father came home from the factory and the first thing he did before dinner, before saying hello, was light up. You remember when smoke was everywhere. But you probably don't remember when smoke was sacred. That's what we're about to fix. You wake up to insects the size of your thumb crawling across your chest. Welcome to the Congo Basin 4,000 years before anyone calls it that. The air is so humid you're breathing water. Everything is green, violently green, aggressively alive. Your clan is gathered around a fire that barely burns. Everything's too wet. But the elder, a man missing his right hand from a crocodile, is preparing something. He's been gone for 3 days. Came back with a root the color of old blood. Gnarled, ugly. He won't let anyone touch it. Now he's scraping it into a clay bowl. The shavings curl like wood, but they smell like earth after rain mixed with something rotten. He adds dried leaves, some kind of bark, then sets it on the coals. The smoke that rises is gray, heavy. It doesn't rise straight up. It spreads across the ground like one filling the clearing. You breathe it in and immediately your tongue goes numb, then your lips, then your face, then the trees start talking, not in words, in patterns. You can see the connections between things. That tree is related to that bird, is related to that cloud, is related to your mother who died when you were 6, is related to the root. Your breathing is related to everything, is related to everything, is you're lying on your back now. You don't remember lying down. The elder's face appears above you, his one good hand on your forehead. You're being seen, he says. And you know exactly what he means. Something is looking at you, not with eyes, with attention, like a spotlight made of consciousness. It's not pleasant. It's not terrible. It's just true. This is iboga, or something like it, used in West African initiation rites for thousands of years. Not for fun, for surgery of the soul. The ceremony lasts all night. At dawn, you're different. Can't explain how, just are. Now we jump continents, and forward 1,000 years. You're in Sumer, early Bronze Age. The air smells like baked mud and human ambition. You're a temple scribe. You can write. Do you understand how extraordinary that makes you? In a world where most people can't even count past their fingers, you can capture sound as symbols on clay. Today you're recording a medical prescription. A priest is dictating, for pain in the lower back, 2 parts poppy, 1 part honey, 1 part wine. Burn slowly. Let patient inhale until sleep comes. You write it down, Hulgil. The joy plant. You've seen it work. An old woman came in last week, couldn't walk without screaming. The priest burned opium resin in a small room, made her breathe it for an hour. When she came out, she was smiling. Said the pain was still there, but far away, like it was happening to someone else. Tonight you're the patient, not because you're hurt, because you need to see the gods. That's what the high priest said. All senior scribes must undergo the vision quest before being promoted. They lead you into a chamber you've never seen. Deep in the temple. No windows, just a small fire pit and a bronze bowl filled with something dark and sticky. The priest lights it, sits across from you, says nothing. The smoke is sweet, cloying, like flowers dipped in honey and left to rot. You breathe it in because what choice do you have? Within minutes, the walls start breathing, in and out, like the whole temple is a lung and you're inside it. The priest's face stretches. His eyes are too large. His mouth is moving, but you hear the words inside your skull instead of through your ears. He's asking you questions about loyalty, about fear, about what you'd do if ordered to falsify records. You answer honestly because lying seems impossible right now. Like your mouth can't form untrue words. Hours later, or maybe minutes, time doesn't work right anymore. You're lying on the temple steps watching the stars. Someone brings you water. You drink. The priest appears, nods. You passed. Past what? You don't remember. But they promote you the next day. Here's the dark side nobody mentions. Those priests weren't just using opium for healing. They were using it for control, for interrogation, for making sure everyone in power could be trusted. Smoke was becoming political. Now we're in Delphi, 5th century BCE. You're not Greek. You're a merchant from Phoenicia. But you've traveled 3 weeks to get here because your business partner betrayed you, and you need to know, should you forgive him or destroy him? The temple is smaller than you expected, more modest, but the line of supplicants stretches down the mountain. You wait, you pay, a lot. And finally, you're ushered into the inner chamber. The oracle is a woman, maybe 60 years old, sitting on a tripod over a crack in the earth. There's smoke coming from somewhere, incense, they say, bay laurel. They say a lot of things, but you notice the smell is wrong, not floral, almost sweet but chemical. Like if air could ferment. The priestess breathes deep, her eyes roll back. She starts mumbling. The attending priest translates, "The one who betrayed you betrays himself. Forgive and profit, punish and perish." Cryptic nonsense, of course, that's what oracles do. But here's what you notice as you're leaving. There's no incense burner. The smoke is coming from the crack itself, from the earth. You mention this to another merchant outside. He laughs. You didn't know the whole temple sits on a gas vent. Natural gas. Makes people see things. That's the secret. Always has been. You don't know whether to feel cheated or impressed. Here's the historical fact. Geologists in the 1990s discovered that the Temple of Delphi sits directly above a fault line emitting ethylene gas. In the right concentrations, ethylene causes euphoria and hallucinations. The oracle wasn't faking. She was high on Earth's breath. But here's the twist. Even knowing that it worked, for 1,000 years, kings and emperors based decisions on her words. Wars started and stopped. Colonies were founded or abandoned. Because sometimes the truth doesn't matter as much as having someone to tell you what you want to hear. So let's pause and take stock. We started with accidental discovery, humans stumbling into altered consciousness. Then we got intentional ritual, shamans using smoke as technology. Now we have institutions, temples, priests, professional smoke breathers. And here's the second twist. The moment smoke became professional, it became performative. The Siberian shaman believed. The African elder believed. The oracle of Delphi, maybe. Maybe not. But she knew how to put on a show. That's the line. That's the moment. When smoke stopped being about connection and started being about control. The priests who burned opium in Mesopotamia weren't seeking God. They were maintaining power. The oracle wasn't channeling Apollo. She was managing expectations. Smoke was becoming a tool. And tools can be used for good or ill. And you sitting there in 2025 watching this at 3 in the morning, you've seen this before. You've watched doctors recommend cigarettes for your health. You've seen politicians lie about safety. You've lived through the moment when something sacred became something sold. That pattern started here, in these temples, with these priests, and it's about to get much, much worse because smoke is about to leave the temple entirely. It's about to enter the marketplace, the battlefield, the living room, and once that happens, there's no going back. Still with me? Good. Because this is where the story gets personal. Up until now, smoke has been exotic, foreign, something shamans and priests and oracles did in faraway places. But now we're entering the age of empires, of trade routes, of conquest, and smoke is about to travel. From Asia to Europe, from the Americas to Africa, from sacred plant to commodity. And your family, your actual ancestors, are about to meet it for the first time. You're a novice monk in a Taoist monastery. Somewhere in the mountains of Sichuan, the year is roughly 200 BCEE, though you don't measure time that way. The master alchemist has been in his laboratory for 3 days. No food, no sleep, just fire and minerals and herbs whose names you don't know. You bring him water. He waves you away. Finally, he emerges. His hands are stained red. His eyes are bloodshot, but he's smiling. I'm close, he says, so close to the formula. The formula for what? Immortality, of course. What else would be worth 3 days of sleepless work? He leads you into the lab, shows you a bronze brazier with something burning inside. The smoke is blue, unnaturally blue, like the color of sky but wrong. Breathe, he instructs. You hesitate. The smoke smells like coins, like blood, like something that shouldn't be burned. But he's your master. You breathe. Immediately your head goes light. Your fingers tingle. The room tilts, but you don't fall. The master is chanting now. Something about Mercury and Cinnabar and the 5 elements, and you're not following because the walls are melting. Not literally, but perceptually. The boundaries between things are dissolving. You can see that the wall is made of stones, which are made of earth, which is made of elements, which are made of energy, which is made of breath, which is made of, you're on the floor now. Someone is fanning you with palm leaves. The master looks disappointed. You're not ready, he says. Ready for what? Death. Because that's what this is. Slow mercury poisoning dressed up as spiritual practice. Here's the historical fact. Chinese Taoist alchemists did this for centuries. Burning mercury, cinnabar, arsenic lead all in pursuit of immortality. The irony, they died. Usually young, usually painfully. But they kept doing it because they believed, because the smoke showed them something that felt like truth. And here's the uncomfortable question. Were they wrong? They died, sure. But in those moments of mercury-induced hallucination, did they touch something real? Something we can't measure, or were they just poisoning themselves in elaborate ways? You'll never know, because the master dies 3 months later. His last words, I saw it, I saw the way. You burn his body according to tradition. The smoke from his pyre is thick and gray and smells like regret. Now we cross the Pacific. Pre-Columbian Americas, Maya civilization at its height. You're not royalty, you're a farmer. You grow corn. That's your whole life, corn and not starving. But tonight you've been summoned to the temple. The king is performing a ritual, and he needs witnesses. You climb the steps, 91 of them you count, because it helps with the fear. At the top, the temple interior is dark, lit only by torches. The king is already there. He's wearing a jaguar pelt and a headdress made of quetzal feathers. In his hand, a stingray spine. You watch because you have to watch. That's why you're here, as he pierces his tongue with the spine. Blood wells up thick and dark. He lets it drip into a bowl of copal incense. Then he lights it. The smoke that rises is white, pure white. And it doesn't behave like normal smoke. It rises in a column straight and perfect like a rope thrown to the sky. The king begins to speak, but not in his voice, deeper, older, like the temple itself is talking through him. He's speaking to his ancestors, asking for advice about the coming war, about the drought, about whether to marry his daughter to the prince from Tikal or the one from Copan. You don't hear the answers, but he does. You can tell from his face. He's not performing. He believes. When it's over, he thanks you for witnessing, gives you a jade bead as payment. You keep that bead for the rest of your life. Never trade it, never sell it, because that night you saw something impossible. You saw a man speak to the dead, and the dead answered. Here's the archaeological fact. Residue analysis from Maya ceremonial vessels shows traces of copal tobacco and compounds, consistent with morning glory seeds, which contain LSA, a natural hallucinogen. The Maya weren't just burning incense. They were engineering altered states with the precision of chemists. But here's the fringe theory that makes academics uncomfortable. What if they were right? Not about the specifics. The ancestors probably weren't literally speaking through smoke, but about the principle. That smoke combined with pain, combined with ritual, combined with belief, could access something. Call it the collective unconscious. Call it genetic memory. Call it God. Whatever you call it, it worked. For centuries, until it didn't. Final scene in this section. We're in India. Early medieval period. You're traveling with a merchant caravan. Silk and spices from the south heading north to the kingdoms of the Ganges. You stop at a river to water the animals. And there sitting on a flat rock by the shore is a sadhu. He's ancient, or looks it, hard to tell. His hair is matted into dreadlocks that reach the ground. His body is covered in ash. He's wearing nothing but a loincloth. And he's smoking. Not tobacco, you won't see that for another 1,000 years. This is something else. He's holding a clay pipe packed with crushed leaves. The smoke is thick and sweet. Your merchant master approaches him, bows, asks for a blessing. The sadhu doesn't acknowledge him, just keeps smoking. Eyes half closed. Finally, he speaks, sit. Your master sits. So do you, because what else are you going to do? The sadhu passes the pipe. Your master takes it, inhales, coughs, passes it to you. You've never smoked anything in your life. But refusing would be offensive. So you bring the pipe to your lips and breathe in. The smoke is harsh, burns your throat, makes your eyes water. And then the world becomes very, very quiet. Not silent. Quiet, like someone turned down the volume on existence. The river still flows, birds still call, but it's all distant. Background noise. The sadhu is looking at you now. Really looking. Like he can see past your face, past your thoughts, past everything you think you are. You carry your father's anger, he says. You do. You didn't know anyone could tell. Let it go. It's not yours. You just picked it up and carried it because no one else would. You start crying. Not sad crying, release crying. The sadhu nods, goes back to smoking. The moment is over. Your master stands, leaves an offering, a bolt of silk. The sadhu doesn't look at it. You walk back to the caravan in silence. Your master finally says, that's why we stop here. Every caravan stops here. For 50 years, he's been sitting on that rock, smoking, waiting, seeing. Seeing what you ask, everything that matters. Here's the historical anchor. The tradition of sadhu cannabis use goes back at least 2,000 years. Documented in the Atharva Veda, codified in centuries of practice. They weren't getting high. They were burning away the self, and some of them apparently succeeded. Let's pause here and recognize what just happened. We've watched smoke travel from Siberia to Africa, to Greece, to China, to the Americas, to India. Thousands of miles, thousands of years, completely different cultures. And in every single place, it did the same thing. It opened doors, sometimes to healing, sometimes to truth, sometimes to madness, sometimes to God. But here's the third twist, and it's the most important one yet. Smoke doesn't do anything. We do. The cannabis in Siberia, the iboga in Africa, the opium in Mesopotamia, the mercury in China, the copal in the Maya cities, the ganja in India, chemically they're different, completely different, but functionally. Same result, altered consciousness, access to something beyond normal perception, which means the smoke was never the point. The smoke was the excuse. The point was the decision to step outside normal consciousness and look around. The shamans and priests and monks and sadhus, they weren't dependent on the smoke. They were using the smoke as a key to a door they'd already built. And that door, you have it too. Your father had it. Your grandfather had it. Every human being who ever lived has had access to that door. We just forgot where we put the key. And now we're about to watch what happens when someone finds the key and decides to make 1 billion copies and sell them for $1 each. That's next. Columbus is coming, and he's bringing a plant that will kill more people than every war in human history combined. Welcome to the part of the story where everything goes wrong, not slowly, not gradually, fast, because we're about to watch 500 years of history compress into 12 minutes. And by the end, you're going to understand exactly why your father coughed every morning, why your uncle died at 57, why the doctors who told your mother that smoking was safe for her nerves weren't lying, they genuinely believed it, and why they were wrong. October 1492, Caribbean. You're not Columbus. You're a Taino man watching strange ships arrive. Tall ships, impossibly tall, with men who smell like they've never bathed and wear far too much clothing for the climate. They seem harmless, confused, lost, really. Their leader keeps pointing at things and saying words you don't understand. He seems to be looking for gold. You don't have gold, but you want to be hospitable. So you offer them what you have: cassava bread, fresh water, dried fish, and tobacco. Not to smoke. You'd never waste it like that. You show them the sacred way rolled in a leaf lit used in ceremony to speak with the ancestors before making important decisions. The strange men laugh, take the rolls, try to smoke them the way you do and cough violently. But then something changes in their faces. You recognize it. You have seen it in young men after their first tobacco ceremony. That look of discovery, of, oh, this does something. Within days, several of the strangers are smoking constantly. Not ceremonially, just smoking, like it's water. You try to explain, this is sacred. This is for speaking to the dead, not for casual use. They don't understand or don't care. When they leave, taking some of your people with them, which bothers you, but what can you do? They take crates of tobacco. You assume you'll never see them again. You're wrong. Here's what you don't know. Columbus's men will bring tobacco back to Europe. Within 50 years, it will spread across the continent. Within 100 years, it will be worth more than gold. And within 500 years, it will have killed 500 million people. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is this. Your people tried to share something sacred, and it became a commodity. That's the pattern. That's always the pattern. Sacred to social, social to commercial, commercial to deadly. And once it starts, there's no stopping it. Jump forward. France, 1918. You're a doughboy, American Expeditionary Force. You're 19 years old and you've seen things no 19-year-old should see. You're in a trench. It's been raining for 3 days. Everything is mud. Your feet haven't been dry in a week. You can smell the latrines from here, and you can smell something worse from no man's land bodies that no one can retrieve. A sergeant comes by with a box. Smokes, he says. Government issue. Courtesy of a grateful nation. You don't smoke? Never have. Your father did. Died of something the doctors called consumption, but was probably lung disease. You swore you'd never touch the stuff, but the sergeant is insistent. Take 'em. You'll want 'em. You pocket the pack. 20 lucky strikes. That night, the shelling starts. German artillery. The sound is beyond description. Not just loud existential. Like the world is being torn apart at the seams. You're huddled in the trench. A man next to you is praying. Another is crying. You're just trying not to think about how thin the earth above your head really is. Someone passes you a lit cigarette. You take it. Because what else are you going to do? Because everyone else is smoking. Because maybe if you're doing the same thing they're doing, you won't die alone. You inhale. It burns. Makes you cough. Tastes like burning rope. But then, and you're not sure if this is real or just desperate self-delusion, the fear recedes. Just a little. Just enough. The shelling continues, but you can breathe. By the time you get home, one of the lucky ones you survive, you're smoking a pack a day. Here's the historical fact. During World War I, the U.S. government provided cigarettes to soldiers for free. Not as a luxury, as a necessity. They genuinely believed smoking helped soldiers cope with the stress of trench warfare. They were right, it did help in the short term. But nobody told you about the long term. You'll smoke for the next 40 years. And in 1958, you'll die of emphysema, drowning in your own fluid-filled lungs, wondering why the doctors never warned you. They didn't know. That's the truth. In 1918, they genuinely didn't know. But by 1950, they did, and they kept quiet. That's where we're going next, 1952. You're a family doctor in suburban Chicago. Medical school 4 years. Residency 3 years. You're smart, educated, you care about your patients, and you smoke. 2 packs a day. Chesterfields, usually. Sometimes lucky strike if the store is out. Everyone smokes. The other doctors smoke. The nurses smoke. There's an ashtray in every exam room. Today, a pharmaceutical rep is in your office, well-dressed, friendly. He's giving you samples of a new antibiotic. Very generous. While he's there, he mentions, by the way, doctor, you smoke Chesterfields, right? We just published a study. Would you be willing to let us use your name? What kind of study? Just physician testimonials. We're surveying doctors about which cigarette they prefer. For advertising purposes. You hesitate. Is it safe? I mean, there have been some concerns. Yeah, doctor, between you and me, 20,000 physicians can't be wrong. And the American Medical Association hasn't found any definitive link. Trust the science, right? You sign. 3 months later, your face is in Life magazine. Part of a 2-page spread. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette, except you smoke Chesterfields. They changed it for the ad. You're annoyed, but not angry enough to make a fuss. It's just advertising. 10 years later, in 1964, the Surgeon General will release a report definitively linking smoking to lung cancer. By then, you've been recommending cigarettes to anxious patients for a decade. Helps with the nerves, you'd say. Helps you focus. How many did you kill? You don't want to know. Here's the truth. The tobacco companies knew. They had research from the 1950s, their own research showing the link to cancer. And they buried it. But most doctors, they didn't know. They trusted the same institutions you trust. The AMA, the pharmaceutical companies, the peer-reviewed journals, and those institutions failed them. That's the betrayal. Not that people smoked, but that the people who were supposed to protect them, doctors, scientists, regulators, either didn't know or didn't care. Your father trusted his doctor. His doctor trusted the system. The system lied, not out of malice, out of money. 1994, congressional hearing, Washington, D.C. 7 men sit at a table, CEOs of the biggest tobacco companies in America. Philip Morris, R.J. Reynolds, Brown and Williamson, Lorillard, U.S. Tobacco, Liggett, American Tobacco. Combined, their companies control 99% of the American cigarette market. Combined, their products kill 480,000 Americans every year. A congressman asked them one by one, "Do you believe nicotine is addictive?" One by one they answer, "No, no, 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 no." 7 men, 7 lies, under oath, on camera. Here's the twist: they knew. Of course they knew. Internal memos released later would show that tobacco companies had been studying nicotine addiction since the 1960s. They knew exactly how addictive it was. They engineered their cigarettes to maximize addictiveness. They added chemicals to keep the nicotine in a form that absorbed faster. They added ammonia to create a stronger kick. They added sugars that, when burned, created acetaldehyde, which enhances nicotine's addictive properties. This wasn't a product. This was a delivery system for addiction, designed, engineered, optimized, and when confronted with it under oath, they lied. That's the fourth twist. The sacred plant that indigenous peoples used to speak to ancestors became a weapon, deliberately, knowingly. And the men who did it, they didn't smoke. Not one of those 7 CEOs was a smoker. They sold what they wouldn't use, like heroin dealers who stay sober. That's where the line is. That's the unforgivable part. Not that people smoked, not that people got addicted, but that the people profiting from it knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway. Your father wasn't weak. He was targeted. Your uncle didn't lack willpower. He was chemically hijacked. That's not poetry. That's not metaphor. That's engineering. We're almost done. Stay with me, because this is where the story comes full circle, where everything we've learned from the Paleolithic cave to the congressional hearing starts to make sense. We're back in the present, or close to it, and we're about to see 2 things happening simultaneously. One, a new generation making the same mistakes with a new delivery system. 2, the old ways coming back, quietly, carefully, sacredly. Let's start with the mistake. You're 16. It's 2016. You're not stupid. You know smoking is bad. They taught you that in 5th grade. They showed you pictures of black lungs. They made you watch videos of people dying of emphysema. You're never going to smoke cigarettes. That's boomer stuff. That's your grandpa's mistake. But vaping, that's different. You're at a friend's house. His older brother is in college, has a vape pen, sleek, metallic. Looks like something from the future. It's not smoking, the brother says. It's vapor. Water vapor, basically. With flavoring. Totally safe. You hesitate. Dude, there's no tobacco, no tar, no combustion. This is harm reduction. This is what the science says we should have been doing it all along. You take a hit. Mango flavor. Smooth. Doesn't burn like you expected. By senior year, you're hitting it between every class. In the bathroom, in your car, in your bedroom with a towel under the door. You're not addicted. You can stop whenever you want. Except you can't, and you don't want to admit that. Here's the truth. Vaping delivers nicotine more efficiently than cigarettes ever did. Faster absorption. Higher concentrations. And because it doesn't smell or produce visible smoke, you can do it constantly. A pack-a-day smoker gets about 20 doses of nicotine per day. a heavy vapor. 200, you're not safer. You're more addicted. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. The same companies that made cigarettes now make vapes. Philip Morris bought IQOS. R.J. Reynolds bought Vuse. They rebranded, but they didn't change. Sacred to social, social to commercial, commercial to deadly. Same pattern, new package. But let me tell you about something else that's happening, something quieter. 2023, New Mexico. You're invited to a ceremony, a real one, not a vape session, not a party, a ceremony. Your friend's uncle is a DNA elder. He's been conducting traditional tobacco ceremonies for 40 years, trying to keep the practice alive. You show up not knowing what to expect. Honestly, you're expecting some new age nonsense. White people with dreadlocks talking about chakras. But when you arrive, it's not that at all. It's a small group, maybe 12 people. Mix of ages, mix of backgrounds, everyone respectful, quiet. The elder explains tobacco is sacred. It's not for recreation. It's for prayer, for offering, for connecting to the earth and the sky and the generations before and after. He prepares the tobacco himself, mixes it with other herbs, red willow bark, sage, cedar. When he lights it, the smoke smells completely different from anything you've ever encountered. Not harsh, not sweet, just clean. He passes it to you, explains how to hold it, how to offer smoke to the four directions, how to set an intention. You feel ridiculous at first, self-conscious, but then something happens. The smoke rises, and you watch it go. Really watch it. See how it dissolves into the air, becomes part of the wind, becomes nothing and everything at once. And you think about your grandfather, the one who died of lung cancer when you were 8, the one who smoked 3 packs a day for 40 years. And you realize he was praying too. He just didn't know it. Every cigarette was a small ritual, a moment of pause, a breath taken deliberately. He was reaching for something. Connection, maybe. Peace. A moment of silence in a life that was too loud. He just had the wrong tools. Let me take you back to where we started. 10,000 years ago. A cave, a fire, an accidental inhalation. That person, whoever they were, saw something in the smoke, felt something, and decided it mattered. And for the next 10,000 years, humans have been chasing that same feeling, sometimes with reverence. The shamans, the priests, the monks, the sadhus, sometimes with curiosity, the philosophers, the scientists, the explorers, sometimes with greed, the merchants, the corporations, the advertisers, but always underneath it all the same impulse to step outside normal consciousness and see what's there. And here's the final twist, the biggest one. The one that makes sense of everything. The smoke never changed. We did. Cannabis in 10,000 BC does the same thing as cannabis today. Opium in ancient Mesopotamia works the same way as morphine in a modern hospital. Tobacco in a Mayan ceremony has the same nicotine as a Marlboro. The chemistry is identical. What changed is the intention. The Siberian shaman used smoke to speak to ancestors. Your grandfather used it to get through his shift at the factory. The Taoist monk used smoke to chase immortality. The tobacco executive used it to maximize quarterly profits. Same plant, different worlds. And that's the lesson. That's what 12,000 years of history is trying to teach us. Smoke is a tool, like fire, like language, like any technology humans have ever developed. It can heal or harm. Depending on how you use it, it can connect or isolate. Depending on your intention, it can reveal truth or obscure it, depending on who's holding it and why. So here we are, 2025. Tobacco still kills 480,000 Americans a year. Vaping is creating a new generation of nicotine addicts. The lawsuits continue. The regulations tighten and loosen and tighten again. But also traditional ceremonies are being reclaimed. Indigenous practices are being protected. People are slowly, carefully remembering that smoke was sacred before it was commercial. Both things are true. And you who lived through the era when doctors recommended smoking for your health, when every restaurant had an ashtray on every table, when you could smoke on airplanes, in hospitals, in high school bathrooms, you weren't wrong to trust the system. The system was wrong to betray you. You weren't weak for smoking. You were human, reaching for something, peace maybe, connection, a moment of pause in a world that never stopped moving. Your father wasn't wrong, your uncle wasn't wrong, they were just given the wrong tools. But here's what they got right, that impulse to pause, to breathe deliberately, to mark a moment as different from all the other moments, to create a small ritual in an ordinary day. That impulse is sacred, always has been, always will be. The smoke was just the excuse. So tonight, as you lie down in the dark, as your breathing slows and your mind starts to drift, I want you to remember something every culture on Earth independently discovered smoke ritual. Not because the plant was magic, but because humans needed to believe that the space between breaths mattered, that the ordinary could become sacred if you paid attention, that you could for just a moment step outside yourself and touch something larger. The Paleolithic cave dweller who accidentally inhaled that first lungful of unknown smoke, they weren't different from you. They were looking for the same thing you're looking for, a way to make sense of existence, a way to connect with something beyond the immediate and the urgent, a way to remember that being alive means more than just surviving. They found it in smoke. You might find it somewhere else, but the search is the same. So as you drift off, remember, you're part of a story that's 12,000 years old. Your struggles, your mistakes, your moments of grace, they're not new. They're human. And somehow, despite everything we survived, your grandfather survived the factories and the wars and the cigarettes long enough to see you born. Your father survived long enough to teach you something, even if it was just what not to do, and you're still here, still breathing, still wondering, still reaching for something true in a world that tries very hard to sell you something false. That's not nothing. That's everything. Sleep well, friend. The smoke has cleared, but the story continues. And tomorrow when you wake, you'll take a breath, a conscious, deliberate breath, and maybe, just maybe, you'll remember that breathing itself is a kind of prayer. That every inhale is a small act of faith that the next moment will come, and the next, and the next. Until one day it doesn't. But until then, breathe live. Remember, you're part of something ancient, and that's worth holding on to. Good night.